In this lecture, we are going to discuss about access modifiers in Java. So, based on the principle of encapsulation, we have seen that an object encapsulates data and the code that works on the data together. So, this insulation of data and code in one unit is the basis of this principle of encapsulation. So we may have an object with the data and the code or the methods that work on this data together. And the idea behind this encapsulation is to prevent unauthorized access of this data inside an object by other objects. So, how is this principle of encapsulation actually used? So, we will discuss this today. So what our idea is that we have to keep the interface for interaction with the outside world, with the objects, simple. So we do not want that the data and the code, that is the object, we do not want it to work in isolation because it cannot be useful in such a case. If from outside nobody can access the data and the methods, then it is of no use. So we want to provide an interface. So if we want to give a small window or a small interface via which the outside world can access the data and the methods. And this interface, we want to keep this interface as simple as possible. So it is up to us, the designers of the objects, to decide which of the data and methods we want to allow access from outside and which we want to restrict. So let me take just an example. So here, suppose I have data X, data Y, method A, and method B inside an object. Now I want to keep the methods A to be accessible, not to be accessible from outside. So I'm marking it in red. So A, I don't want it to be accessible from outside. Similarly, I don't want X and Y to be accessible from outside. So I'm left with only M, which is again a method. So this method, I want that from outside, we should be able to, anybody from outside should be able to access this object only via M, only via the method M. So the method M can be a part of the interface. So now in the programs that we have written so far, we have not implemented this concept. Everything that we have created, data members or methods, these were all accessible from outside. So we have to use the concept of access modifiers in order to implement this principle of encapsulation. So let us see how. So we can restrict, as I have mentioned, we can restrict access of the class members, members of a class or an object, whether it is data, that is instance variables, or your methods, we can restrict them through the use of some terms, of some keywords which are called modifiers. Or they are also, because they restrict access, so they are also known as access modifiers. So what are these access modifiers? There are different types of access modifiers. The first is public, then we have private, then we have protected, and so these are the three basic modifiers. Now in addition to this, there is also another one, which is the default access modifier. Default, as you know, is when you don't specify any modifier, then what should be the purpose, or what should be the access restrictions on that particular variable. So let us look at one by one. So public, private, and protected. And also we'll look at default. So for public access modifiers, these are declared with the keyword public. Okay. So when we declare an instance variable or we declare a method, we have to prefix the term, the keyword public to the declaration. And what does it specify? It specifies that if I declare an instance variable or a method as public, then it is accessible everywhere. Throughout the program, anywhere in the program or outside the program also, this data member is accessible. So we'll declare, we can write, we can declare it like this. Suppose it's a data member. So I have declared instance variables like this, say int length. Okay, this is how we have declared our variables. So now if I add the keyword public, okay, then this, the variable length, the instance variable length now is accessible everywhere. It is accessible everywhere. So it can be accessed from within the class, it can be accessed from outside the class, and so on. The second access modifier is your private access modifier. So as the name suggests, we declare them using the keyword private, okay, and mind the small p, both in public and private. So if it is private, then that data member will be accessible only inside the class where it is declared. So if I have a class, say class rectangle, okay, and here I have int length, okay. So this is the other things that are there in the thing. So here, if I were to add the keyword public, then length will become accessible everywhere. But if I add private, if I add the keyword private, in that case, length will be accessible only inside this class, only within this class. You cannot access it from anywhere from outside. So that is the private access modifier. And third one is something we will not discuss very much in this lecture. Later on, we will see about it, is protected. So protected is declared with the keyword, again, protected, again, small p. And it is, you can think of it as a more relaxed version of the private. Why? Because suppose, again, this is an object. I have a data member X and I have made this private. So red color, I'm going to use it for private. So when this is private, suppose I have another object here of maybe the same class or from another class. And from here now, if I try to access X, I will not be allowed. Okay, that is a private. But if it is if it is protected, then certain classes and objects are allowed to access X, okay, based on some conditions. Now, what are these conditions? These we can see later on, but let me tell you for now that this, if I have, say, another object here, which is a special object, okay, by special object, I mean something which satisfies certain conditions. So in that case, through this, I will be able to access, oh, sorry, let me just rub this. This is, so I have the object here. This one was the private, this is private. Now I have another variable y here. Now let me mark it with blue, okay. Blue, if I use blue for protected, then certain special objects will be allowed to access X. This will be allowed, okay. But again, if I want to access X here, I will not be allowed. So y I can access because y is protected. Whereas x I cannot access because x is private. And if I have another one, say I have another z, which again I will mark with green. So this is, say, public. In that case, I can access, I can access from here. It will allow me access, and also from any other object, I will be able to access Z. So if I write it here, X is private, Y is protected, and Z is public. So from outside, I will be allowed to access Z. I will not be allowed to access private, but in for regular classes, I will not be allowed to access protected also, but in special cases only I will be able to allow, I will be allowed to access protected. So what are the special cases? We will discuss in the coming few lectures. So this was about protected. Now we have seen public, private, and protected. Now let us look at the next one. Let us look at the next one, that is default access modifier. Now what is default? Default is when we do not specify any modifiers. Okay, so that is how we have been declaring our variables. So if I have again class rectangle, and I have declared like this, int length, this is also valid. Now, however, remember that this is not public. It is not public. Okay, instead it gets what? It gets the default access modifier. And what is the default? How does it behave? Default acts like public, but little bit more restrictive. That means it allows access of length from outside the class, but only within the same package. I'll just write down the term here, package. Well, for the time being, just remember what is a package. Package is nothing but a group of classes. Group of classes. So when in one file, suppose in one Java file, you are declaring two classes or you're creating two classes, we can say that they belong to the same package. Okay, so that is your default access modifier. In the next video, we will take one example and see how all these different types of access modifiers will work.